Columbus, Georgia, this is your City Council. Mayor Teresa Tomlinson. City Manager Isaiah Hughley. Pop Barnes, District 1. Glenn Davis, District 2. Bruce Huff, District 3. Evelyn Turner Pugh, Mayor Pro Tem and District 4. Mike Baker, District 5. Gary Allen, District 6. Mimi Woodson, District 7. Tom Buck, District 8. Judy Thomas, Post 9 at-large counselor. Skip Henderson, Post 10 at-large counselor. Tiny Washington, Clerk of Council. And City Attorney Clifton Fay. Columbus, Georgia, this is your City Council.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the March 29th meeting of the Columbus City Council. We're so glad to have you here. This is actually a work session, so it's an opportunity for us to take a little deeper look at some issues we're dealing with, take a little bit more time, and again, we're just so glad to have you with us as we talk about these important issues. We're going to go ahead and get started with an invocation. We have Neil Richardson, chaplain at the Sheriff's Office, and also someone who helps us out so much with our homeless population, but also, importantly, finding long-term housing units for those who are experiencing homelessness. And Neil, we really appreciate what you do, and we're glad to have you here to bring us the invocation consistent with your faith tradition.
Thank you. Shall we pray? God, I just lift up these you've called to lead. I lift up their hearts. I lift up wisdom, and I lift up those you've called these to serve. And I pray today for decisions that benefit all. I pray for wisdom, and I pray mostly for compassion. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Neil. And again, thank you for all you do. If you all would stand and join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the first item on our agenda is to walk through the aquatic center options. And so we're going to turn it over to the city manager and ask Dr. Worsley to come forward. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. First up, we are going to have Dr. James Worsley and Deputy City Manager Pam Hodge talk about aquatic center funding options. And for those watching by television, we've been talking about this subject for some time now, 5 or 6 months, and we've been trying to find a way to fill the gap for funding. We have $825,000 to fund the aquatic center. We believe we need $1.2 million to fund the aquatic center, and so we have been looking for some options of finding the gap, $500,000 roughly. And we brought before council a few weeks ago 17 funding options for them to take a look at. I did have a recommendation at that time. We did not get to go through all 17 of those funding options that we had brought for council to consider. And so last week when we met, we were asked to bring the 17 funding options back before this council and go through those funding options, and council could at least consider those options or some of those options or a combination of those options to find the $500,000 to fill that gap of getting from 45 hours a week operation to 89 hours. And so last week we had some discussion. We brought the preferred vendor before council, and the vote was inconclusive at that time, and we were asked to bring these 17 options back. And so Dr. James Worsley and Deputy City Manager Hodge is going to go through those options. And so I'm going to turn it over to you at this time.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Good morning again, Mayor, members of council. Well, it's a privilege to be before you this morning. As our city manager said, Deputy City Manager Hodge and I will go through, and there is one update. We are going to go through 16 options this morning. We consolidated one of the options from previous conversations that we had in regards to not looking at closing facilities, which was two of our senior centers, and so that has been taken out. So we'll follow through with the 16 options as presented before you. I'm going to invite Deputy City Manager Pam Hodge to come forward this time. She's going to talk about option 1 as it relates to hotel motel tax.
Option 1 talks about the reallocation of hotel motel tax, and this is one that has been discussed before. Currently, the River Center receives 1%, Civic Center 2%, Trade Center 1%, and CCVB 4%, for a total of that 8% of hotel motel tax. And the request, or this particular option, is to reallocate a portion of the hotel motel tax to the Aquatic Center, which would be part of the tourism development, product development allocation. So this would be option 1.
Oh. Councilor Thomas.
Ms. Hodge, do you or Dr. Worsley have a recommendation of how that reallocation would be divvied up? I mean, are you taking some from each one of those, or are you recommending it all come from one particular area, or what is your recommendation?
The recommendation from the previous meeting was to take the $200,000 from the River Center. The Civic Center and the Trade Center currently are getting an allocation or support subsidy from the general fund, and so that would just further impact their subsidy by eliminating a portion of the hotel motel tax from the Civic Center or the Trade Center. So it would put additional burden on the general fund for those two agencies. And so the recommendation was the River Center at $200,000, which is 1/3% from the River Center.
Thank you. Mayor,
Just for
I don't know.
I have not made a
I don't know
recommendation.
I don't know the process that you want us to do this morning. Do you want us to respond, to ask questions at this point, or let them go through the whole presentation, or
I think last time we only got to 2, so it's certainly your preference as to how to proceed. This activity here today is to educate everyone so when we get into the budget meeting, we can make decisions. The council can make decisions. It's also to edify me because I'll be making a decision in the proposal, which I haven't made yet. I've made an outline, as you all have seen, and was printed in the paper, but I haven't made any decision about where those monies will come from or how it will be allocated. So this is just a process of going through the 17, which we haven't done fully yet, and ask questions if we'd like. So if you have questions, certainly this is a good opportunity to flesh them out.
Thank you.
Okay. Great.
Thank you, Deputy City Manager.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councilor Barnes.
I'm going through I'm just going to let you know what my position. I'm going through this whole thing, and what the city manager had proposed is I brought a motion and it wasn't seconded. That is my position. Okay, so that was to reduce a portion of the motel hotel tax, and the other one was to add to the community schools the fees.
Okay.
So that's my position. I've gone through this entire packet that was sent to me. I deliberated on this here, and these other options represent to me too much of an impact to the communities. I'm talking about to the children and seniors that have to use. So that's my position.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. We will proceed, and I'll be moving towards 2A to talk about recreation centers and reduction in hours. If you have questions, feel free to write those down, and if and ask those questions, and we have a team over here to vet that information. If we are unable at the time of your question to get your answer to you as quickly as possible, we will do so before we adjourn today. Okay, number 2A. This slide looks at operational hours going from 44 current hours to 30 hours in the future, and the cost savings here would be $450,000 to get us to this amount. Of course, there are impacts that will come along with that, as we noted previously, in terms of citizens having less hours, all the way to potential risky behaviors by youth not having a safe haven to go, and of course, decrease in operation expenses such as employees being displaced, 13 employees, and various activities. To add to that, we've offered you some additional information from previous presentation, letting you see to take a look at what FY15 budget takes a look at, which is currently $1,296,000, a little more, and then FY16 budget expenditures to date, $829,000, and then we give you at the very bottom of this particular slide usage from, and we're talking about foot traffic as you had mentioned before, usage from FY15, 186, 231 people, FY16 usage as of to date, 106.1.
Okay. Yes, we have Councilor Thomas.
Dr. Worsley, when you say 13 part-time employees will be displaced, do you mean that their employment will be terminated?
Yes,
or do you mean they'll be moved to other positions within the city?
I mean that they will be, when I say displaced, that they will no longer be employed with the Columbus Parks and Recreation Department. They will be terminated, so reduction in force.
Okay. And they will not be placed in other positions within the city, is that correct?
That's correct, not those 13 part-time employees. We would not be able to fund them if we went to this extreme of cutting hours. That's sufficient.
Thank you.
Just to give you a snapshot of what recreation proposed hours would look like in terms of what they currently are, recreation hours operate 11 to 7 Monday through Friday, 2 to 6 on Saturdays, closed on Sundays, and that gives you 44 hours. And under this particular scenario, the proposed times go from 4 to 9 Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 9 to 2 Tuesday and Thursdays, 1 to 6 on Saturdays, closed on Sundays. And then current summer is the same as it is as for the current as it is today. Proposed summer looks a little different in the future if this were the scenario chosen. 3 to 9 Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 9 to 3 on Tuesday and Thursday, closed on the weekends. There is a different scenario as it regards to the recreation center when we look at 2B, which does not take a look at the full 14 hours of reduction, but looks at 7 hours reduction from 44 hours to 37 hours, which we look at a cost savings here of $206,000. Same impacts, a little less in terms of staff. We're looking at displacing or reduction in force of 9 part-time staff here. And then, of course, various activities such as mentoring, tutoring, sports programs that go along with that as well. The hours of operations look a little different in this scenario as well. Currently, as I mentioned, 11 to 7, proposed to be 3 to 9, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And then we look at the summer hours are a little bit different. With some of the conversation that we had here earlier, what would summer look like? And so we took that into account if we were to move with this scenario, making sure that the centers operated with more daytime hours as well, as you see in a proposed summer scenario of Tuesdays and Thursdays, 9 to 5, and then 2 to 9, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. They will be closed on the weekends, however, to give us our 37 hours of operation time there. Any questions regarding the recreation centers? Okay, we move to 3A, which talks about outdoor pools. And this scenario looks at Saturdays and Sundays only for operations of outdoor pools with a cost savings of $347,000. Of course, with that type of significant impacts, we will decrease our staff, reduction in force of 15 to 20 lifeguards / concessionaires. And of course, we will decrease the operation costs here as well. The merchandise we purchase for redistribution will be less, chemicals, utilities, and instructor fees as well. But I would say it is a challenge to also hire lifeguards simply on the weekends because most folks want to work during the summer. They want to work as many hours as possible. So it's hard enough to get lifeguards as it is. It would be even harder to get lifeguards just for the weekends. And, of course, you have our youth that we're always concerned about as well, participating in more risky behaviors by not having a positive means of outlets to look into. If you look at what more information in terms of impact to provide you a little bit more data, FY15 actual budget expenditures were $596,000. FY16 budget expenditures for to date, $289,000. And your line items are here as it turns to revenues, concessions. Revenue gate, $85,800. Concessions, $40,000 in FY15. FY16 to date, $38,824. Concessions to date, $20,621. And keep in mind, our pool season splits over 2 fiscal years, so we will pick up the other revenue for FY16 this coming pool season once we start. The pool season typically starts the Wednesday after school lets out. And, of course, we add some projections here, what that might look like in the future. Gate projections, $45,000, concessions, $31,000, and then your totals are at the bottom there as well. Okay, 3B takes a look at, okay, if we operate the pool 1 hour less per day, what would that look like? The savings are not as significant as some of the others, $8,751. Of course, a slight decrease in operational expenses when it comes to merchandise redistribution, chemicals, et cetera. Also, decrease in annual revenue. Here we also provide you with a little bit more data when it comes to numbers for gate and concessions. Here listed at the bottom. Again, your totals, $125,921 for FY15, $59,486 for FY16, and projected for FY17, $107,921. So what?
Yeah, we have Councilor Woodson.
Dr. Wesley, what makes it such a significant decrease in the concessions then? What was done differently in 15 and 16? Because that's a big change. That's practically half.
We haven't finished. I was saying earlier, our pool season splits fiscal years. So where you see $20,000 here for FY16, I expect that will be made up once pool season go from May until June 30th. We'll pick up revenue there. And then the other part of our pool season will go into FY17.
Okay,
so the numbers here, FY15, are not showing, FY16 are not fully vetted yet. They're not complete.
Okay, and 15 is complete.
15 is complete.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Take a look with me at some outdoor pool proposed hours as we are talking here currently about pools. Currently, pools are closed on Monday and Tuesdays. Wednesday, Thursdays, Fridays, outdoor pools operates from 12 to 6. Saturday operations are 11 to 7:30 on Saturday and Sunday. And the proposed continue the same close days. The times will shift a bit in terms of 1 to 6 Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, 12 to 7:30 on Saturday and Sunday for your 30 hours there. And then at the bottom of this slide, it gives you opportunity to take a look at FY15 usage of what it was at each pool location. And the pools are Double Churches, Solomon Road, Rigdon, and Shirley Winston for your 4 outdoor pools. And then here listed beside FY15 usage, as you will see, Double Churches had the highest level of outdoor usage at 11,322. And then your lowest usage was Rigdon at 1,700. FY16 usage to date, your numbers are listed there. And those numbers, again, will not be complete until June 30th. That will conclude your FY16 budget year. Okay. At this time, I would like to invite Deputy City Manager Pam Hodge back up to the podium to talk a little bit about option 4, golf course subsidies.
In this particular option, it would be to eliminate the golf course subsidy. Currently in FY16, that subsidy is $50,000 for Bull Creek and $250,000 for Oxbow Creek. This would require these enterprise funds to be self-supporting, which is what they're supposed to be as an enterprise fund. And so this would eliminate that subsidy in future fiscal years.
Pam, does this subsidy include the $100,000 debt service?
What's included as expenditures for Oxbow is their debt service, so a portion of this subsidy could be considered to offset that debt service. The final debt service payment for Oxbow is in FY17, so we have one more year debt service payments.
All right, we're tagging out pretty good here. All right. Option 5 is our next option, and it looks at fully implementation with a transition to eliminate the community schools division with Muskogee County School District taking over all after-school programs, which would be a cost estimate savings of $300,000. Just as some background knowledge, in 2011, since 2011, I guess I should say, 6 after-school programs have transitioned to the school district, which were Allen, Britt David, Magnet, Hannon, River Road, Blanchard, and Winton Road. Currently, the Parks and Recreation Department oversees 21 elementary schools today and 5 middle schools. Decrease in operation costs would be 4 full-time employees, and 134 part-time employees would be reduced in force due to the transition, if that scenario was in effect. A little further information.
We have Councilor Woodson.
Not last Tuesday, I wasn't here for personal reasons, but previous to that, I asked, can we get some information on what's the estimated time or what is the school board considering in reference to these 21 schools that are left? Did we ever find out anything about that?
Yes. I haven't heard the latest in terms, the last time I spoke to the school superintendent, there's a transitional plan that they have in place for a few of the schools to be transitioned over the next 3 years. And I don't have, there were 8 schools in the next 3 years. Do we have the list of those schools? Okay, can we get those? We can get those for you before we conclude today. I know there are 8 in the next 3 years that they're looking to transition at our last conversation that we had at the school district.
Was there, and I'm probably catching you off guard, but was there any reason why they said just 8 schools if their intent is to take them all over?
In our meeting, the conversation I had was dealing more, and this is how it was proposed to me, it was dealing more of a program to help kids that were falling behind to have some additional after-school services that were more academically inclined, is the way it was put to me.
I'm kind of having a hard time swallowing that for the simple reason that they took just about all the elite schools and they left all the rest behind. And now you're saying to me, and you're just a messenger, so I'm just replying. You're saying to me they only think 8 schools are appropriate to take over at this time within a 3-year period? That sounds, I don't know the right word to use, but it doesn't sound accurate. If you're a school system and you are to educate and help protect our children, why only 8 schools that are at risk important to you? We'll need to have an offline discussion on that.
Certainly.
Because that really makes me concerned, and I think any parent and any taxpayer should feel that concern too. You know, you're taking the elite schools that can afford additional care, additional tutoring, additional volunteers. It's a total life. You're taking those because it's easy and it's easy to make some money off. But yet you say you care about children, but you're leaving the ethnic children behind. I have a problem with that.
Okay.
Thank you.
And so, Dr. Worsley, let me understand. Since 2011, they've already transitioned from Parks and Rec to the school district 5 schools.
6
schools.
6 schools.
And then over the next 3 years, they intend to transition an additional 8 schools.
At the last meeting, that was correct. I believe the program they call it was a LEAP program.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
And so they're moving in that direction and at a pace, I guess, that works for them. And so our proposal, obviously, was to accelerate that. And you'll talk about, if we don't accelerate it now, what the other option will be in just a minute.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay.
In saying that, in saying that, is there somewhere in this proposal then, or this presentation, if they would take the 8 schools within 3 years, what would be then the budget needed for 2000? and 17. Are we still going to need the 300,000?
We talk in the upcoming slides. We talk about fees.
Okay.
Once we talk about fees, we can flush out if fees were set in a new budget for the new schools that we would have. So we don't talk about necessarily the 8 schools specifically, but we do talk about fees, and we can go back and talk about what that would look like once we had fees set, if that was the scenario that we looked at. Or if it was maintained with this scenario, we'll get that budget for you as well.
Okay,
Well-
and I would like, if possible, not right now because we're in the middle of this, but I would like to see those numbers or talk about those numbers later this week. That's fine. I like to see that because it really, really concerns me in the momentum that the school system is going in order to educate and protect our children. It really concerns me. Thank you.
James, of the 8, did they give you a sense like two in FY17, 2 in FY18, or did they just leave it at 8 over 3 years?
During our conversation, they were staggered. They weren't all within one fiscal year. And that's what we're going to try to pull that information. I want to make sure I tell you the accurate information versus saying it was 2, it was 3 schools in the next fiscal year. They were not all at one time. They were staggered.
That may be good to know if, for instance, they've committed to 2 or 3 schools, what that cost savings would be.
That's right.
So,
Well, and did they give an idea of which school? If it's going to be 2, 2, and 2, because I think, we can look at the 6 schools, and if I was looking at a total of 30 schools or so, they would probably be the first 6 I would pick from a ability to pay standpoint. And so the question is, you got those 6, will the next 8 be along that same line? I'm going to cherry pick the schools with the greater ability to pay on a we operate on a sliding scale based on income. Mm-hmm. And so will the schools be the next 8 be the ones further out the income scale rather than on the lower end of the income scale, and then that's going to determine what our deficit will be if we continue down this road.
right, I see what you're saying. So if the schools that pay at the higher rate and pay with more regularity because of the ability to pay are removed from our system, then we're left with just really the deficit running schools and nothing that's offsetting that deficit of revenue.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
And then we have to remember we operate on a sliding scale, starting, and he'll talk about it in just a minute, and where a parent may pay $21 for the first child. Every child with the 6 schools that they've moved over to the school district, your first child and every child pays $45. We're getting $21. They're getting $45 for the schools they cherry-picked.
Right. Okay. Counselor Thomas.
Dr. Worsley, when you had the conversation with the school district, were they aware that that your recommendation was that we fully eliminate all of our after-school program?
The conversation I had was prior to putting this together. So
when they told you 8 schools, they didn't know that ultimately the goal is to eliminate all of our participation.
That's correct.
Well, let me just interject and say that I talked to Dr. Lewis personally more than a month ago when the story first appeared in the Ledger Enquirer. And I told him at that time I would be recommending to council that we transition all of the schools over to the school district. I told him my recommendation to council would be that we continue through the end of this school year, we continue through the summer months, but in the fall when the kids return to school, they would be with the school district and not with the city. I told him that at that time because Of course, I didn't know, and I told them, obviously, it's subject to the approval of council, but I knew that they would be going into their budget process as we are going into our budget process, and they could start to think about it and plan for it. And so I personally had that conversation with them.
But at this point, we don't know if they have made any further plans other than these 8 schools that they told you about. And I do think, Mr. City Manager, that in looking at the list of schools that have been transitioned, I think it's a little off the mark to say that these are all high wealth schools. They're not. Several of them are in neighborhoods where the majority of the families are not well off, if you will. And just because they are magnet schools or whatever does not mean that every child that goes to that school is wealthy. There are a number of these kids that are from very, very poor homes. And so to say that they cherry-picked and only took the ones that could pay the fee, I think is maybe a little more than actually is. I'm looking at Hannon. Hannon Elementary School is in the middle of a very depressed neighborhood. And to say that they picked Hannon because all the parents at Hannon could pay the fee, I think is probably not accurate. I don't know. I haven't had the conversation with them. But just from what I know about that neighborhood and what I know goes on, I think it's not, it may not be entirely accurate.
Well, and you, perhaps you may be correct, but of course I've never used the word wealthy, and so I don't think any of them are wealthy, but just based on the information I received from staff about they've experienced how the payments come in at the various schools over the years that they have operated the after-school program. And what I have articulated is based on that information.
Councilor Davis.
Thank you, Mayor. One thing I want to add to this conversation that I think is really important for the citizenry to hear. From 2001 to 2008, the city actually operated in the black with this program, averaging over $100,000 in revenue coming into the city. I think that's real important to understand, because when you look at Dr. Worsley and his department and the challenges that he has in meeting the needs of the various programs throughout the city, including the Aquatic Center, you got to look at this, because this is one of the reasons that we have a lack of revenue today to support the operations of the programs. If you look at from 2001 to 2008, we were operating at over $100,000 surplus, making revenue on this program. In 2009, we all of a sudden went to a negative $200,000. Well, that's all of a sudden a loss of $300,000 in revenue to Parks and Recs. Since then, the numbers have varied, but somewhat we're carrying that program to the tune of minus $200,000 today, and could get to the point where it's going to cost the city more. So when you look at that and you talk about the program, I'm not talking about the worthiness of the program, I'm just looking purely at the numbers here. This is a subsidized program. Whatever changes took place is now costing the city operating revenue. That's revenue that we don't have to run this facility or other facilities. So, you hear sometimes a conversation about the Aquatic Center being a white elephant, so to speak. In the past, when the decisions have been made, there was revenue in place to make decisions to operate a lot of these facilities. Now you have the challenges such as this that is now taken away from revenue to operate these facilities. So I think that's important to understand, and I think Dr. Worsley is trying to show us that this is hindering the operations of Parks and Recs. So, what is the answer? Is it eliminating the program or going up on fees. I think that sooner or later, across the board, the world's changed. So we're going to have to find a way to do business different. And if we have to start going up a little bit on fees to support all these programs, we're just going to have to do it, or else everybody's going to have to realize we're going to continue to go deeper in the hole into the reserves. And there's the challenges for the mayor and for Dr. Worsley and the city manager.
Well, and let me just say, when you go back to the late 90s or the 2001 through 2008, Parks and Rec, when they started the after-school program, they didn't just go out and start at 31 schools. They started with 1, they grew to 3 and 5 and so forth and so on. And so when they got into it, they were doing fairly well, and there was grant assistance as well. But obviously, when you start an after school, I don't know what schools they started at, but they were quite successful. And then they had to grow and make this program available citywide. And the more they grew, and then you don't increase your rates as we have done with this and garbage and everything else. If we don't adjust our rates with inflation and the cost of personnel and the cost of doing business, then we're going to start to drop behind. And so where we were breaking even and not adjusting rates, it catches up with you. And then you still don't adjust rates, and then you start to operate in a deficit. And then we still don't adjust the rates, and the deficit gets larger. And then we realize that, we should have been adjusting rates 10 years ago. And so that kind of got us to, I think, where we are. And so when you look at the market, and he's going to share with you some numbers of, I've just shared with you $45 a student for the school district, and so many of our kids, we get $21. Well, when you get to the private sector, it's much higher than the $45. And so we are not trying to make a profit. We want to take care of our citizens, but the bottom line is we probably need to try and break even. And that's where we are today.
Thank you. Dr. Worsley.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on and talk a little bit about, since it's a good segue to talking about fee increases. And this is fee increases for the after-school program, and with the same thought process of how to come up with the extra $300,000 that will be needed. And so when you start looking at impacts, the sliding scale that we're looking at increases that sliding scale about $6 per entry. And of course, this could potentially cause some hardship for those parents that are not used to providing a higher rate on the lower end of the scale, or on the higher end of the scale for that matter. So take a look with me at the after-school program weekly rates as they currently are, and then we'll also, in the green is what that shows you the $6 increase. So I'll give you 2 examples. $60,000 and above, the first child is $56, and with the increase goes to $62. And of course, there is also a reduction for the second child and each additional child thereafter. But if you follow all the way down less than $12,000, that first child pays $21, and then the increase of 6 goes to 27, 16 goes to 22, and 13 goes to 19, which falls in line with what the city manager was just saying as it relates to fee increases and what that might look like. What I also would like to show you are comparisons, not only with Parks and Recreation, but throughout.
Before you leave that slide, do you have any numbers of how many of the children who are in this program are less than 12,000, 12 to 19? We have those kinds of figures.
I did not add it in this presentation, but we'll work on getting that for you as well.
Thank you.
Okay. As we look at, again, the comparisons as for Parks and Recreation, we're currently income-based, as was previously noted. Our currently weekly rate is 21 to 56, depending on where you fall, and the drop-in rate currently is 10 to 20. We're proposing, in this scenario, the income rate, as I said, increased by 6. 15 goes to 25 as far as the drop-in. And we're also proposing in the Parks and Recreation a set fee. And so the set fee will be consistent with what the school district currently provides, which is $45, along with the drop-in rate at 10. As I said previously, Muskogee County School District has 6 schools. Their fee is set, and it's $45 with a $10 drop-in. You start looking at some of the private, nonprofit areas, such as the YMCA. All those have set fees. Their fees are much higher than what we currently offer, as well as their drop-in rates are higher as well. YMCA is $75 weekly with a drop-in rate of with a drop-in rate of $35. Child Care Network $85. St. Luke $82. Growing Room $110. Angel Academy $115. We do expect with any type of fee increases that there would be some drop in enrollment. We're projecting that would be probably about a 25% reduction for those individuals that could not afford such an increase that may have to find services elsewhere in that scenario.
And is that if we were to go to $45?
That is if we were to go to $45.
Yeah, not the $6 sliding scale.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
That's $45.
Yes. Yeah.
What was that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mr. City Manager, what was it you answered yes to?
Well, I said, he's projected, obviously, when you increase rates, you're going to have a decrease in
Participation.
Business. And he was talking about, he was saying if the city went to the same rate as the school district, $45 per child. And I was just making clear that he's not suggesting that decrease if we went to the $6 sliding scale.
Gotcha. Okay.
In each income category.
I gotcha. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Well, let's move on to 7A. In 7A, we're going to talk about Cooper Creek tennis hours. And this is a reduction in Cooper Creek tennis hours. The estimated cost savings here that we're looking to find is $176,700. Of course, decreasing hours would make it difficult to secure. I'm going to tell you the impacts. It would make it secure in tournaments, perhaps, at this facility. Change in hours would disrupt current programs that are there. It's also duly noted that the facility is bringing on some new courts, 12 hard courts, 9 clay courts, as well as 4 quick start courts, a new clubhouse as well later in this year. If the cost savings are not used to support the Columbus Aquatic Center, then we're saying the cost savings will be needed to be used to support the staff, equipment, and materials needed to operate the new courts at this facility going forward. As well as the change in hours would also decrease the revenue at Cooper Creek. Let's take a look at the information that we have here on the next slide. Reduce Cooper Creek tennis hours. With one scenario, you're going to see 79 to 45 hours, which are the winter hours. And we have a couple of different scenarios, so if you'll bear with me for 1 second. 86 hours to 45 hours is the summer per week. And then also we'll talk about raising fees in these scenarios as well. So that you get an idea of what some of the numbers look like. The actual budget expenditures for FY15 were $257,354. And then currently in FY16, to date, we have $167,321. So you get an idea where some of the revenues come from. They come from fees. For FY15, $171,651. Currently to date, $113,000, and projected for FY17, $79,200. Concessions, FY15, $22,693. $13,225 year to date, and $10,008 projected, and then your totals there are at the bottom as well. Here in this scenario, A, we take a look at winter hours. Totals 79 hours going to 45 hours in the winter, and summer 86 to 45. At the bottom, we also take a look at the usage for FY15. 39,931 individuals, and FY16 usage to date, 24,297 individuals utilizing this facility. In the second scenario, given for Cooper Creek hours, this scenario looks at 79 hours to 60 hours per week for the winter season, 86 hours to 60 hours for the summer season, And also the cost savings in this scenario is $108,400. Again, the impacts are there. And at the bottom, we take a look at the fees and concessions, the totals. As I mentioned, for FY15, $194,345. FY16, $126,278. Projected for FY17, $134,345. Giving you the opportunity to take a look at what this schedule will look like if a scenario was in place for 79 hours for the winter, 79 versus 60 hours for the winter. Summer, current is 86 again, proposed is 60. So basically 60 hours year-round, regardless of the season. In the scenario C for Cooper Creek Tennis, a little less cost savings here, $36,200. 79 hours goes to 75, 86 to 75. And again, the impacts are here for you to look at. The projections for FY17, $174,345 as it would be projected in this scenario. The hours for scenario 7C looks like this in terms of a schedule. 79 hours for the winter again, 75 for the winter, 86 for summer, and then proposed 75 for the summer. And your usage numbers are at the bottom as well. I want to talk to you a little bit also about the Cooper Creek Center proposed membership fee increases and as it relates to what would be increased as part of this scenario, of these scenarios. Type of increase for single year one. Your increases are in green, going down the column that says proposed Muskogee County, and then the second green column, proposed non-Muskogee residents. In the white, current Muskogee residents for year one, for an example, they currently pay $220. What we're proposing for a Muskogee County resident, they would pay $250. Out current non-Muskogee resident pays $250. They would pay $300 in those scenarios. Then it goes down, senior, juniors, 3 month. We have senior, junior, single. We have family, and then we have senior, junior, family, and it gives you the time frame and what those increases will look like as well. As also part of...
And James, I'm sorry, what would that total impact be?
The total,
if you were to make those fee increases, what would the impact be?
It's going to be a total of $24,000.
Okay.
It's on this slide here.
Oh, okay, thank you.
And so these are also additional increases. This is hourly fee increases, and so you have here on the left-hand column, Muskogee County, Muskogee Adult Day, and then per person per hour, they currently pay $3. I'm going across the first row. That proposal would go to $350, and then so forth and so on down the line. And then the estimated additional revenue for all tennis fee increases is the $24,000 that I just mentioned. Okay. Take a look at the next option, option 8. We talked about privatizing David Pottery Studio. The cost savings here would be $125,342. Privatizing basically means we would recoup that money because we would not be providing that particular service. But there are some impacts as well. The private vendor may charge more money than we currently charge. We don't know that yet. The scope of class offerings may change. There's 1 full-time employee, 5 part-time employees that would be reduced in force due to the nature of this particular proposal. But more would have to be vetted through our RFP process in order to really determine what would all be needed for privatization of the Britt Davis Pottery Studio. The current revenue there that we receive is $41,550, and so that would be, of course, decrease that we would no longer have in the neutral, in the positive, excuse me. We take a look also at some more information. FY15 actual budget expenditures for the Pottery Studio, $163,856. In FY16 budget expenditures to date, $119,232. You take a look over to the right-hand side, the second block where it says revenue, the fees, FY15, $41,550, and again, to date, $31,524. Usage at this particular, at the last block, FY15, usage of the facility, 20,232 people, and then to date, 12,229. I'd like to talk about 9A, which looks at our therapeutic recreation program. Currently, we're saying the cost estimate savings here, should changes be made in this particular option, of $118,398, and impacts of what this particular will look like. Participants who currently do not pay programming would pay yearly participation fees. The program participants that currently come to the program do not pay a fee. So what we're saying here, yearly participation fee will be $2,277 or pay in monthly installments of $190 for in-county residents, $3,000 for the year, or pay $250 per month for out-of-county residents. And again, this, if you go from zero to something, it could potentially have hardships for some participants. Currently, programs at the facility are free, as I noted, and some are listed here at the bottom of this slide as well.
James, let me ask, therapeutic recreation.
Yes.
And then you give us some of the programs. Am I wrong in assuming that somehow that's addressing our disabled population?
Yes.
Or explain a little bit,
Sure.
What is therapeutic recreation?
Okay. Therapeutic recreation basically is providing recreational services for individuals with special needs and disabilities. Give you an example. If you come back from Afghanistan, since we live so close to the military base, and I know that's very close to Pop's heart as well, someone that used to like to play a particular sport or an activity before they went off to battle, they lose a limb, unfortunately. They can no longer be able to participate in that same activity as they used to. Having a recreational therapy program in place means that person can now come to this facility and regain that momentum or those cognitive skills or physical skills working with the staff there to be able to do some of the things that they're used to do. Maybe it's bowling, maybe it's playing golf, and it may be they may have to use some type of limited ability equipment to help them do that. So in a nutshell, that's therapeutic recreation.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's take a look also at 9A. What we're talking about here, implement monthly yearly fees. I want to give you some actuals here as impacts. FY15 actual budget expenditures, $114,026, and currently date $44,003. And then here at the bottom, you can take the only thing, there are some that we have transportation for that were grandfathered in some years ago. We're getting out of the transportation business in that regard. But in FY15, $6,500 were made in revenue, $33,000, a little over $3,000 to date, and projected $4,500 in FY17. Again, no fees are currently implemented. Projected in FY17, if fees did go into place based on this proposal, then the cost savings or the revenue generation will come there. Okay. Let's take a look also.
James, we have Councilor Davis.
Just a question on this topic, Dr. Worsley. You mentioned a matter of disability a little while ago. For these programs, I don't know if there's a cost involved. I'm just guessing that the city just puts these programs on and they're just available to the citizenry.
Yes.
Is that right?
That's correct. Though, I mean, we vet, say if you come, you sign up to be you remember we need to make sure we do an assessment of that person. So we understand what their needs are as well.
Well, are there any, I wanted to ask this question, do you know if there's any support via insurance, via disability benefits and things of that nature that would cover programs like this?
Currently, most folks are going to see this like an after-school care program, and so with therapy recreation services are not covered. It's not like a PT service, physical therapy or occupational therapy that you're going to be able to file and reclaim some type of reimbursement for that particular service.
But normally how it works, I'm not talking about filing just because they come to a program, but is it already in their, the support that an individual or person may receive, would that cover programs like this?
I guess I would have to know more about what type of financial services that individual already receives. I don't personally know right now, but each person that's in the program, their mode of payment. Because many of them are paid through private pay, through the people that are caregivers for them, pay for their services to be in the program.
Pops had some information.
Glenn, in
related
answer to your questions, there is some limited, but just like in any other case, everything has a limit. And with individuals who have disabilities, amputees, it's the regular question: if you don't use it, you lose it. So therefore, going to a therapeutic pool makes it more easy for these individuals to move those limbs. But but it's a limited amount of therapy that's given. I mean, that's insurance. Did I answer your question?
I think he was saying that in the stipend that's given if you're on disability, whether it's military or just otherwise,
No,
that you're on disability, is the stipend you're given, the monthly stipend, does that include some factor for
No,
therapeutic recreation activity?
No.
Well,
I didn't understand what your question was.
And I think you're getting at, can we charge them a nominal fee for service? Yeah, and I think the answer to that is it's a city offered program or service similar to just opening the rec center for youth to come and play basketball and pool and do other things, and we don't charge for it.
That's correct.
So it's a service we provide.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And it's also probably due to be noted that anytime our participants go out to a location, we'll use bowling for example, they pay that cost. We don't pay their costs to participate in those activities outside of Pop Austin Rec Center, the services that we provide in-house.
Councilor Thomas.
This therapeutic recreation program is at Pop Austin, is that what you said?
Yes, ma'am.
You also said that we have people who evaluate the participants in this program?
What I mean by that, if you were to come to the program, we have paperwork that the caregiver will fill out to let us know a little bit more. I'm talking about more of an assessment, not a psychological evaluation, but more an assessment. Can this person tie their shoe? What things can they do by themselves? What are their likes and dislikes? An assessment so our staff will be more knowledgeable how to work with these individuals that come and participate.
Does our staff have training to do that?
Yes, they have training. I'm a certified therapy recreation specialist, and so there's nothing that say that they can't. It's just like our after school programs, for example, that when a child comes in to sign up for summer camp or they fill out the paperwork, we want to know more about that participant. There's not anything medical that they're searching out to find about this individual that they would need a medical license to act upon.
I guess I'm just a little taken aback that we are providing therapeutic services to people with that could do damage to these folks if it's not done in the proper manner. I mean, if I have a disability, a physical disability, and you give me some activity to perform, if that it could be that activity would cause me more harm than it would good. I'm just real concerned. Do you as a certified physical therapeutic, I'm sorry,
Certified therapeutic recreation specialist.
Do you review all of the paperwork that comes in?
I do not review all of the paperwork. I go to the location as often as possible and meet with the staff and meet with the program participants and be a part of activities as I can.
I'm just real concerned that and I hope that we can continue to provide this therapeutic program, but I'm a little concerned that we not get too far into this and do too much that there's some liability there for us. I don't know that there is. I just want us to be cognizant of that.
Well,
James,
Madam Mayor,
talk a little bit about the types of programs. I mean, it wasn't physical therapy